He described the exact place where he saw people burn down the camp, but the fire department found out that this place wasn't burning in the night, it was burning the day after. And it was like really questionable because he never showed up in court.
The locals will receive a very clear political discourse, which is those walls our government are doing something. They're solving the problem. And for the asylum seekers, it's going to be more, oh, we're unwelcome.
You told the stories of these people in a way that honored their dignity. And I have seen many documentaries made about refugees where either it's negative, even sometimes it's positive, where they show you, look at this refugee, he's doing well. You know, the good ones.
There were some protests. One of them in Ritsona campus, for example, built schools, not walls, right? Showing that there were so many families with children and the access to education almost did not exist. And we're back with Fractured Podcast with two new super interesting and important guests in our studio, Jennifer Mallman and Alaa Dia. You guys agreed to talk to us today to explain a complicated and a non-complicated issue. I'm sorry for putting it like this. The situation with Moria 6 is what we are predominantly going to speak about today. Should be something pretty simple given all the evidence that were presented, yet it's been dragging for 3 years now. On top of this, everything that is going on in refugee camps in Europe, in Greece specifically, and the surveillance that has been introduced, that's something on top of the topic. And we invited you to speak to us about this because you, Jennifer, you're the director of a documentary about Moria 6. You're also a co-founder of Habibi Work. And Alaa, you supported Jennifer with your research when she was making the film, but you're also an architect, lecturer, and a PhD candidate in the Urban Studies Department at the University of Basel. Thank you very much for joining us today. Going straight to the questions. I feel like we have to start by explaining who the quotation mark here, Moria 6, are.
Yeah, thank you, first of all, for the invitation. Moria 6 are 6 boys, and the names of the boys are Hassan, Ali Ashgar, Mortasa, Ali, Faiz, and Mahdi. And these boys lived in Camp Moria, and after Camp Moria burned down in September 2020, they got arrested and they were accused of setting the fire. And all of them didn't know each other and they claimed their innocence. But until the trial, which took place in March and June 2021, they remained in custody. And yeah, the 6 teenagers got convicted in a very controversial trial and were held responsible for the destruction of Camp Moria. And I said controversial trial because it really was. The short version of it, there was basically no evidence. Non-witness in court haven't seen these boys in the night, and there was just one written testimonial of a person who also lived in Camp Moria. And this written testimonial was criticized from lawyers, from trial observers, from forensic architecture, because it doesn't made any sense in a way. Like, for example, he described the exact place where he saw people burn down the camp, but the fire department found out that this place wasn't burning in the night, it was burning the day after. And it was like really questionable because he never showed up in court, and the written testimonial was the only thing the court had in her hands against the boys. But yeah, in the end, they were found guilty and they got sentenced up to 10 years in prison. And yeah.
I think at this point it is worth mentioning that there is a very, very good documentary actually a research-based video, so to say, by Forensic Architecture. They did a tremendous job on showing what most probably happened with the fire of Moria camp, taking a lot of materials, open resources, put out there online, showing, for example, the direction of wind, what burned first, what burned later, to also show that most probably those testimonials of this one individual that led to conviction of Moria 6 boys, that this was not true, because the fire simply started in most probably different places, right? So we will add the link to this documentary. It's on YouTube for everybody to watch and make their own opinion on this issue, because it is still very much here alive as a topic in our humanitarian bubble. Jennifer, I would like to ask you, so you mentioned that you started writing letters to all Moria 6 boys. First of all, why did you get so interested, or like why did their story moved you? And the second thing is, like, you decided to portray Hassan, only one of them in your film. So I'm curious about the decision on that.
Yeah, that's true, and I understand why you asked this. So why I really started to do this film was, I read in an article about this trial, and I think it was just one article too much I read. It was just such a clear case again of criminalization of migrants, and it just, I was so angry about it that I thought, okay, I think I need to write them a letter and ask them what's the opinion about this case and how they are doing. And I wrote letters to all of the 6, and 4 of them replied, and I was constantly writing to 4 of the 6 boys. And but with Hassan especially, I was writing letters more often than the others, and we are still in contact. But the main reason why I decided to use just Hassan's letters in the film was definitely the reason that he was on prison leave, and he wanted to record his letters by his own. And this was really important to me, because from beginning on, my plan was to make this film to shed light on this case and to give the boys a voice. And I wanted to spread their perspective and give them the opportunity to tell their story by their own. And I really didn't want to use any different voice, like from a dubbing actor or something like this. So this was the main reason for it, because the other 3 weren't allowed to go outside the prison, and there was no chance to record inside the prison.
I really like that you said you were angry. That's your motivation, and people.
Anger is really a great motivation.
Yeah,
every
it should
time
be, especially
to start acting.
To push people and do stuff. I watched the movie here at Refocus, and I really liked it. One of the things that I like about it is that you told the stories of these people in a way that honored their dignity. And I have seen many documentaries made about refugees where either it's negative, even sometimes it's positive, where they show you, look at this refugee, he's doing well, the good ones. So how did you do that? How did you make it that appealing to people, and also you respected the Moria, the people who are involved in the documentary?
First of all, thank you. It's a big honor to hear that. I think it all based on the letters I was writing with the boys. Like, especially Hassan, he also was writing a journal, a daily journal, and he gave it to me with, like, he was drawing pictures, like how his room looks like and what are the other guys in prison doing and stuff like this. So he was like telling me a lot of his life and his perspective, and I tried to get like the emotions from this and try to find a way to tell the story, like with different kind of pictures, which like tell the emotion and not just facts. Maybe this is where film starts. I have the feeling sometimes art is the point where you can't find any words. Like if you have no words left to say, then film starts. And maybe, yeah, it was, I would say, more like Hassan's work that he, described how his life was in prison. Yeah.
You know, we were discussing here in the studio before we connected with you what we liked about the film, and everybody said the same thing, that we like this slow pace of the film. It's a documentary about a very, tragic issue, but also those events that can be very easily sensationalized, right? There's a fire, there's a prison, court, and stuff like this. It could go very fast and very chaotic, yet your pace is very slow. And this is something we really liked about it, because it builds this emotional narrative, and it gives you this like intimate feeling of really feeling the situation of Hassan. Alaa, I want to move to you now because you work in urban studies and you examine and research European reception centers for asylum seekers. So I was wondering if you can give us a little bit of an overlook what kind of place Moria was. You researched it as well, so that our listeners have a little bit more information of this place before it was, of course, burned.
All right. First of all, thank you for inviting me to be able to talk about at least a part of my research, which is about the infrastructure of borders in Egypt. Moria camp, it was, at least in this case, was one of the most notorious, quote-unquote, refugee camps in Europe. It's located on the island of Lesbos, like we all know, but originally was dedicated as a first reception center, later a reception identification center. And quickly during those times, which became overcrowded and under-resourced space marked with peculiar living condition and systematic failure in asylum management. So in its peak, when I visited the first time, which was back in 2019, Moria camp, which was near a village called Moria, it's not near to the capital of Lesbos, Mytilene, was around 23,000 people living there. And the facility was actually designed for just it was very specifically few thousands designed for it. So the camp function back then was both humanitarian and carceral space. It provides shelter, but at the same time, it's processing asylum seeking, while simultaneously, at the same time, enforcing containment and exclusion away from the mainland. So how are we gonna look at it about what is Moria in very specifically? It's some sort of a site of crisis-driven humanitarian intervention overlaid with security logic of some sort. So you have multiple agencies working all together. We're talking about Greek authorities working with European actors and with international organizations and NGOs operating in some sort of an assemblage. Everyone is doing different things all together. The camp spatial organization and governance of this becomes a very, very specific of containment. So the islands, they do offer this kind of shelters and services and all of that, but it's actually the main idea is to keep them away from the mainland of the Schengen area. So it's kind of some sort of an internalization of a line of defense of borders. And back then, this is a space that is very specific, that is about reacting to so-called migration crisis back in 2015, where a lot of asylum seekers arriving informally on the islands of Aegean Sea. And we're talking about here not just Moria. We're not talking just about Lesbos, sorry. We're talking about other islands. So it becomes a site, a facility that is built with EU money, by the way, to create a way to stop this migration flow entering the Schengen area. And within that, they created centers those centers were low in capacity, which of course created a humanitarian crisis, which in my point of view is self-induced by the Greek government did that by stopping the asylum seeker to leave the islands. And that's part of one of those geographical restrictions that asylum seekers will be restricted on those islands to not be able to leave it. So you have this kind of islands that are containment, that are prison by itself. You have facilities that as well are for accommodating those asylum seekers that actually are getting funneled through the system until they are getting either deported from the island or letting them in if they have an asylum seeking case that is successful. All of that happened before 2020, right? But I would like to just to mention that Moria camp itself had a history before the first reception center and before the RIC. Actually, the first time that the center started there was because there was a military. It was a military base back then. And back then, the police or the Hellenic law enforcers built what's known as a screening center, and that was the start of the notorious camp, and which after a while extended toward this majestic space of accommodation holding around 23,000 people back in late 2019. So at the end, that's how you need to look at it. It's Moria camp is an administrative detention center. It's semi-open sometimes to fully closed for detaining people, but at the same time you have an island that is fully sealed. So you have multiple levels of detention that asylum seekers are exposed to depending on their case. Hopefully that will answer the question, I guess. But after 2020 fire, then this is a whole situation happened, and another center got built after that called Temporal RIC, which is located in an area called Mavarovoni. Excuse my Greek, sorry. And then that operates similar situation as well. Yeah.
So my question is to Jennifer. I don't know if you really imagine, but you made a documentary in a place where it's really, really bad, was bad, and is still bad. And, I have met many people who are volunteering in Moria, and they told me, like, some people, they volunteered for a week and then they left because they could not stay there for long. And one person told me, I froze. She thought, oh, it's a fun activity. So how did you navigate the challenges there and you made this amazing piece?
Well, I wasn't filming in Moria, just to clarify that, but we were filming in the Close Control Access Center in Samos. And it wasn't easy to get the permission. And but in the end, we got the permission to film there for 2 days, and I decided to travel to Samos much earlier to have the chance to talk to people who have to live in the Close Control Access Center. And during the 2 weeks I spent on Samos, I managed to talk to some organizations on the site, but most of the time I talked to people who lived in the camp. And I did that to understand how it might be as living in the center, and above all to integrate these feelings and perspectives into our filming. Because when we are filming at the camp, we talked a lot as a team before and after about how we are going to film and which kind of image we want to record. Like, for example, we never used long lenses. Like, people who were filmed always knew they were being filmed. And the camera woman never hid behind the camera. She was always standing very obviously next to the camera and clearly showed that she's going to film right now. And but it's still sometimes quite strange to see this image, because the camp implies something. In my opinion, the architecture and the whole structure of the Close Control Access Center implies that people are locked up for a reason. And I didn't want to create an image that migration is a crime. But on the other hand, I wanted to report on the asylum system in Europe, and I also wanted to show how these close control access centers are working and how they look like. So it really helped me a lot to talk about these feelings and about like this, surrounding with a team and to be aware of this problem, like which kind of image we are recreating or creating and how we are going to film. But it was quite a challenge, yeah.
Actually, this was very unusual because you got a tour basically over Samos camp. There are a lot of controversies among the humanitarians, aid workers, about this camp. So the government claims that this is an amazing facility, a model for any other camp. Humanitarian workers claim that this is actually almost a prison for people, that they are very much cut out of any services. So from those two perspectives, you, Jennifer, explained already a little bit what you make of this, but I'm also interested in Alaa's view as a person who works with urban planning and researches those things. What do you make of Samos as a camp?
Yeah, so I had the opportunity as well to visit the CCAC Samos as well through the official channels. And I had to go around and see the architecture documents and see what kind of facilities are they working on. They're prefabricated container situation where they're actually building bigger and more prison-like facilities. So I don't know, because I mentioned a couple of things about the models were changing between first reception centers to a reception and identification center to a temporal reception and identification center to a CCAC. So the CCAC means close control accommodation center on the islands of Aegean Sea, right? So it is closed within it. They're going through a very specific pattern of getting more and more punitive spaces. Like we're talking about more prison-like facilities. We're talking about NATO fences that are 3-4 meters high. We're talking about barbed wire. We're talking about perimeter roads around the facility, not 1, not 2, 3 actually, so the cars can go around and patrol the areas. The facility that is in this new CCAC that we're talking about is actually as well divided in blocks, like prison blocks. Not to mention as well, as Jennifer will talk about later on about the control center back in Athens, but there is as well this kind of a way to talk about state-of-the-art surveillance and monitoring system in those centers. So there is a pattern of going through. There's a humanitarian crisis that went through some sort of a security logic that they wanted to have more and more security of so-called detention facilities, and it became now more obvious that they want bigger mega centers of asylum seekers that are getting detained there to be processed from the moment of arrival to the decline of acceptance in one space, far away from the mainland of Greece or Schengen area. So architecturally speaking, we're going toward a model of more and more punitive spaces of architecture. We're building prisons, and that's how we're treating migration.
From the humanitarian workers' perspective, there's a lot of criticism about all of those CCACs, any type of camps, detention centers in Greece. And there should be, I think, some kind of a balance between, yes, bringing security and making sure that citizens of each country feel safe, but at the same time providing adequate asylum procedures and not making people who apply for asylum and come from places of war and torture and persecution feel like they are criminals, right? So I was wondering, Alaa, if you ever found like a good example, some kind of a model to replicate, or something that is like the best so far experience of a reception center in Europe?
Yeah, I mean, it just happened. Europe, in response to the conflict in Ukraine, the EU activated a temporary protection directive that offer immediate protection and support to all displaced Ukrainians, right? From November 2023, there's like 4.2 million Ukrainians that benefited from those mechanisms. We're talking about not just residences permits, access to the labor market, housing, and medical access, as well as education for the children. I mean, even now from January 2025, there's 6.3 million registered Ukrainian refugees there. It's very difficult to not see the differences here, because actually I was in the field in 2022 when I was actually interviewing a couple of asylum seekers, and they told me, like, I mean, why is a very specific profile of refugees is accepted and we're not? So if we're gonna talk a bit of numbers, like the EU actually continued to receive asylum application from individuals originating from Middle East and Africa and Asia. In 2023, around 700,000, less than 700,000 asylum decision. 50% are some form of protection. In 2014 to 2016, which so-called this crisis of migration, it's estimated as 1.2 million refugees. So I'm a bit like, you know, it makes me wonder about like how fast EU was to you know, create mechanisms of protection directly in a couple of weeks, to allocate money, resources, and, you know, fast track procedures for them. And it became a very strict form of realizing that there is, even during this time, other non-Ukrainian asylum seekers did not change at all. Like the same process. They took them months or even years to be processed in this situation. And it is a bit of like, it's a bit very obvious to see the EU approach Ukrainian refugee situation as ideal and been notably unified and generous, while responses in asylum seekers from other regions has been more fragmented and at some time very restrictive. So that's one of them. But of course, I can tell you superficially, yes, we need bigger, better, humane condition with dignity. I say that EU already implemented an agenda that worked out very well, just implemented to all asylum seekers.
It is really hard to not believe that, you know, when you compare to the situation of refugees that come from the south and Ukrainian refugees, that there isn't something racial about the approach of one and the other groups. Guys, on the topic of how the camps look like and different solutions for housing, no doubt that what was prepared for Ukrainians was so far the best model Europe and European Union came up with. And of course, it showed that this was possible the whole time, right? So many Ukrainians came, they got this pretty decent treatment, rightfully so, again, not saying that they did not deserve it, absolutely yes, but nobody else from any other country got the same treatment. And it is understandable to a certain point that it is really hard to house big numbers of people. Camps were built in different places. But the thing that always is problematic for me is the fencing around the camps. So there are camps like, for example, the one on Samos, you have this barbed wire, actually like double barbed wire and fence to protect people. And there was it was a big thing a few years ago when here on the mainland, most of the camps were fenced, but like they were not fenced. Actually, there were walls, pretty high walls built around them. And when the decision was made, there were some protests. One of them in Ritsona camp was, for example, build schools, not walls, right? Showing that there were so many families with children, and the access to education almost did not exist. yes, they had some in theory, but the schools were not there. People couldn't access it with transportation or anything. So there was never any much money put into education of kids, but suddenly a lot of money was found to build those big walls. And the argument there was that we need to protect people who are inside. It was like, okay, so whom are you really protecting them from? Like, so you're claiming that the locals now are showing some danger to the community inside. It was like a very, like undercover operation that nobody really, everybody knew what this is about, that we have to put those walls around so that everybody feels like they are separated, but nobody wanted to really show this argument to the public, right? So this is the thing that always bothers me with the camps, the fencing, the walls, and this. It creates an atmosphere that there is something really dangerous and we have to be careful, right? Yeah,
definitely. But Alaa, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, this is a bit what I study when it comes to the imaginary of, or the aesthetic of architecture or the infrastructure itself, and what does it mean for the people to have it. I mean, of course, the discourse of always camouflaging detention and punitiveness with care. It's always been the situation. Refugee camps have always been used as a way to provide care, but as well to exclude. So there is a bit of exclusion in this kind of approach. The thing is about offense, and now maybe we're gonna go a bit philosophical about what is it really offense? Like, the fence is a fortification, right? It can be a fortification to save you from outside, and it could be inside outside. It's kind of it's the build material that we're seeing right now in those centers. It reflects the perfect ambiguity of an asylum seeker, because he's stuck in between. Those islands are technically a in between, a limbo, a liminal space of some sort that they need to be put there. And not to mention, if you wanna be a bit hard on the Greek government as well, they kind of sacrifice those islands for the sake of, protecting them from something. So the thing is, it's you build those centers and you build those big fences, and it shows two things. It represents the first image or first message for the asylum seekers themselves, and the other one is for the locals. The locals will receive a very clear political discourse, which is those walls our government are doing something. They're solving the problem. And for the asylum seekers, it's going to be more, oh, we're unwelcome, and which is for a lot of governments is true. So that's how you're going to look at defenses. Of course, right, it doesn't really matter if the government is right or left or the switching between governance happening. It's still, when the wall is built, it's built. And those spaces are changed forever. They're changed in a way that, it's going to be a space where you're not going to be accessed. You're not welcome anymore. And we need to exclude you away from it if you're an asylum seeker, or protect you from them and hear them in this situation for the locals, because some of them are very worried about the situation and require this kind of a promise through infrastructure, right? So this is how you need to look at it in this kind of bit meta stuff on migration. That's the message.
Yeah, that's true. I would like to add, after being in Samos and filming the documentary, I just had the feeling that the only reason why these new camps exist is that they limit the radius of freedom. They are trying to prevent people from becoming part of a society, and these centers just increases the isolation of the people. And like how you said, Alaa, the architecture implies that, and that people are locked up there for a reason, or they creating an image which stays. And this is quite this is so frustrating. And we really need to talk about these kind of things.
I just want to add one thing. part of creating a punitive experience, theoretically speaking, it requires a couple of elements, aesthetically speaking. That's when, first of all, the location of the center. The more the remote is, the more detached and isolated you are. The second one is the usage of a monolithic, like a same prefabricated containers or all of that. This is part of the hardening of the space as a way to create the most punitive experience possible. And that is not the first. The Greece government is not the first person who does that. This is the U.S. and Mexico borders is full of those centers, and this is an occurring model that is appearing now all around, and a lot of countries are learning from each other. There is a bit of high-tech border control industrial complex that is going around, and it's been making money and profit about creating centers like that to avoid or to stop migration, especially from global south toward the global north, and that's all part of the infrastructure. Yes.
Guys, one of the very unique things that you have in your film is the footage of the whole surveillance in the camp. It was in Samos, right?
No, yeah, no. It shows the pictures from Samos, but this control room is placed inside the Ministry of Migration in Athens.
So this is even like more important question to me. First of all, how did they allow you to film this? Because I would like never in the world, like this must have been something undercover thing. On the other thing, I'm just like, maybe they wanted to brag about those new technologies that they're using.
Or maybe a whistleblower.
Yeah. I think it was more like this. I indeed, it wasn't easy to get the permit. I was writing emails like constantly, and I gave them a call like every week. So, and after like a half year, they said, okay, you got a permit just for 1 hour, you can go inside. But in this time when we got the permit, they were kind of proud of this new technology, about this room in the middle of Athens, and they like cameras from all the close control access center are streaming live into Athens, and they can like 24/7, and they have like different kinds of techniques. And so I think it was more like a show off. And but I think Alaa can tell us much more about what kind of technique is really used there. And yeah.
Yes, please, because some of our viewers will not actually maybe see the film, and it is very impressive, I have to say, to watch all of those screens.
I didn't know they were in Athens. I
No,
thought they were
neither.
there. Wow,
I thought
this
it
is
was
scary.
like somewhere on the islands. Yes, Alaa, please tell us more about that.
Yeah,
scare us more.
Just those had this control center, which is actually centralized in Athens. It is kind of a message. It is a message for the asylum seekers and for the people that we have things under control. How efficient they are, that's a different conversation. There was a bit of like this control room has been used so much as a way to create a discourse, especially back then for that government, to say that they are doing everything and they're using technology in order to keep people safe. Safe from what? How? This is a whole conversation. But this is a promise of a political promise of some sort. And they made it magnificently, actually. It looks great. It's awesome. Apparently, if you see one of the reportages in France 24, I remember they even put apparently drone powered by AI that is going to be somehow monitoring any violation or any risk of violation. This is all happening while they were failing to provide water to the center. We need to put that in perspective a bit. There is a bit of show off, like you guys said, of like flexing the technological arm that we are doing this for keeping people safe. People safe, who the Greek government showing that actually they're keeping their promise of being strong on migration management. so the technology itself, it is a basic centralized mechanism of cameras that are powered by a software that determine if you have a shiny object or not. This is basic. They still use they use the same thing in airports. They use the same thing in others. So like this kind of software that determine that he has a shiny object, this might be a risk. So they will have an alert. How much this actually function? Based on my research that I found out later on, very, very rarely. It was just a flex of some sort. But again, I am not a tech person. I do look at technology as in a very specific way. And I just realized later on that it was all a way to tell me that they're doing a very good job of surveillance and monitoring asylum seekers in the centers.
For me, it's also the question of the necessity, because you already have people behind those fences, usually barbed wire or walls, and there's still such an extensive surveillance put on the camps. It's not like, much outside the camps or anything like it. It's the camps that are being monitored, right? So is there really that much happening inside the camps that they need to be both surveilled and fenced that much?
Yes and no, depending on the numbers.
Okay.
It's the way that they will protect it is like it's more. So we need to look at it a bit different. Like security, it's not in the hands of the Hellenic law enforcers in those camps. Those are private sectors. They're intentionally provided private sector security to do this security thing, intentionally to reduce the expenses and to be able to operate those kind of approaches. Welcome to a neoliberal way of managing migration. It's always been like that. This is how they're doing it. The way that is, you ask them about those tough security measures, camp managers and staff will all use, they always say the same thing. It's the same security of an airport. They're trying to soften this kind of language in a way that create this kind of discourse that is like, well, we have the same security of an airport. We have an X-ray for who's going in and out. We have CCTVs to monitor who's in and out as well. And the fences is just to make sure that everyone is safe inside and outside. So this is their discourse. Of course, this is a discourse at the end. It's a bit far from reality as well. And this is something that we as academics, we always try to understand. What does it really mean to put individuals in this kind of spaces? And are you really aiming to integrate those population if you're putting them in those centers? Is there either, this is a message, a clear message about it. So this is pretty much it.
This is a very harsh reality we're talking about. And in Refocus, we have so many students that they want to make documentaries, they want to tell their stories and other people's stories, but they are challenged with this question of how I find the balance between showing this harsh reality and maybe offering a message of hope and resilience. So Jennifer, how do you do it as a filmmaker?
This is a good one. And I'm not sure if I did that, actually. Like thinking about the case Moria 6, I don't know if this case is a case of hope or...
They are still fighting, so I think there is hope.
Sorry?
Rasheed was saying that they are still fighting, so maybe there's still hope.
Yeah. So, I think what I can say is that I met many people while doing this film who fight for the rights of others, and like the lawyers of Legal Center Lesbos. And this gave me hope, and I try to show this in the film, that there are people out there like who do care and who do fight for like a difference, for a different world. So I think this could be the hope, but as you said, it's quite challenging to have a balance. Yeah.
So maybe this is a good moment to actually say where we are with the trial, because we are recording this podcast just a week before the trial restarts. And this is a little bit of a complicated issue because some of the boys were already cleared of charges and now it restarts. So Jennifer, can you explain this situation a bit?
So Moria 6 case was separated in two cases. One case was at the court for minors, and the other court was just a normal mixed court. So the two minors got their first trial in March 2021, and then had their appeal court. But nothing happened at the appeal court. The only thing was that the time of their sentence was reduced because of good behavior in prison, but they are still guilty. And the second case in front of the normal court took place in June 2021, and then they also appealed. And the appeal court took place finally after reordering changing the dates on and on. It took place last year. And in this appeal court, they found out that the 3 of the 4 boys were actually minors, which was obviously and was clear from the first moment of the whole trial. So now 3 of the 4 will start to have a new trial again. And this trial will start on the 25th of March 2025. So this trial will start from ground zero. And they're at the meantime, these 3 boys are not anymore in prison. They are allowed to be in Athens, to be in Greece, and
thank you for this clarification. It's important to say that they already spent so much time in prison, and now it can go back, right? So I can imagine how stressful this situation must be, especially for young boys who, have their dreams and that their potential education, training, everything is right now put on hold, right? I would like to go back for one more moment to the situation of and inside the camps, because Alaa, you several times already mentioned different trends that are happening in this area, but I would like to ask you to sum up a little bit where this is going, the situation with the hotspots, with the reception centers, the whole migration management situation. Where are we now, and where is this going in the next few years?
So, thank you for this great question. I think the way that I can think about the future by already looking, and because I traced back historically what, at least from the early 2000s on, what kind of facilities were built on those borders, and it was kind of interesting to see a pattern, and a prediction will be that there's going to be always an intensifying of humanitarian and carceral logic that is layered one after the other. So as that right now we do have CCACs that are built, which are clearly punitive detention, prison-like facilities, which are very huge mega centers to process asylum seekers that arrive to those islands. It's right now the peak of carceral logic that is happening. The way that this carceral logic existed in before, but got overcome by the numbers that arrived. So the thing is, the state has been always, and I say state here, multiple actors of state, they're always been into creating this barriers, and usually these barriers get overcrowded with numbers, that creating a humanitarian crisis. And it's becoming this kind of a pattern of, you build a prison, there is a humanitarian crisis. You build a bigger, stronger prison, you get a more humanitarian crisis. And the more and more you're going into those models, from screening centers to first reception centers to a RIC center to to now CCAC centers, it's been a pattern. So it's been showing this kind of dynamic. There's always this kind of always the trait of selective openness and closure, which is always the same thing of realizing who's allowed to enter and who's not, depending on different criteria. Has been always this is happening. There's the good migrant, there's the bad migrant. And we need to create spaces, and not we need to create, they created spaces in a way that it's actually managing those good migrants / not bad migrant, if you're gonna say it. And with this rise of this kind of border complex, industrial complex that's happening, it's becoming more and more this idea of states are copying the model because they're looking at other states, how they're managing their migration. So they are building bigger, stronger prison-like facilities that are sometimes harder than real prisons to manage migration. So it's becoming a trend globally, and one of the things that we need to keep in our mind to think about it is like those models are existing in global north. Those global north having those models. So what is going to happen in global south when they look at those countries? They're allowed to do that. They're going to create borders that are as harsh because they're allowed to do that, because suddenly they are kind of justified somehow. So there's another like globally how borders are being constructed now under those under those standards, which now is getting harder and thicker and honestly more punitive. We're criminalizing migration. It's as simple as that. And finally, the last point that is, you can see how EU is spending so much money to externalize and remote management. We're talking about Turkey. We're talking about, I mean, haven't we heard about the UK trying to send asylum seeker to Rwanda? So this is another model as well that is recopied from different ways. The EU-Turkey deal was in a way to send migrants back to Turkey and give Turkey the right funds and support to build those centers there. So this is a trend as well, externalizing and remote management, externalizing borders in some sort of a way. And all of that is happening while we're speaking, and it's everywhere, sadly.
Yeah. Alaa, because you're an architect, I need to ask you this. Have you watched the movie The Brutalist?
I'm hearing a lot about it. I should watch it.
Should I spoil it for you?
Don't. I haven't watched it yet either.
No, it's a question. It's just when there's a scene when he arrives into America, he's an immigrant, he's lost. And I remember when I arrived to Greece, I was making fun with a friend of mine. We were in the line, and I told him before, I don't know when, but in the past, when immigrants were coming to America, if you are in the line and if you cough, they're like, okay, you're sick. You need to go back. And I was making fun of him. He was like, maybe in the future they will do this. And now I'm like, no, the future is like, you are not coming at all. So where do you think, can you tell me like maybe the worst scenario if things still, because we are talking about they're doing this, even the UK now they don't want to give nationality to people who came with boats. But what's the worst scenario if we don't fix this now?
What is the worst scenario?
For the record, I want to say that it's a very bad question.
Why?
Just
I want to know. I want to know so we know that we don't go there.
Not a bad. There's no bad questions. It has. I want to respond to this first of all because it's two part of this question. The first question is similar to this movie. There's the Godfather movie that has the same kind of chain of thoughts of like they arrive to this island of quarantine. And migrants are being quarantined there because they wanted to protect their population from this. And this is one of the things that we need to keep in mind. Is just like those islands that are been there has been before. I mean, Christmas Island in Australia has the same heritage as well. But to think about the worst situation, sadly, we are in an era that we live in one of the worst situations. Like when I went to Tunis and I saw I saw asylum reception centers in near the Libyan borders. I mean, the dehumanization of the situation was like beyond my imagination. Um, we're witnessing this kind of externalization of those centers to remote manage. And when I say we, not me, but like more the Western governments are investing more money to allocate the responsibility of managing migration to a third world country. Just like it's not us, they're doing things, but take the money. And there's a bit of truth of that. They're buying their way out of actually human rights if you think about it. It's just like, yeah, send them to another country. They will be managed there. And I think this is a bit of, we live in this era of creating loopholes. I mean, there was the context of Malta using a boat, a huge one of those container boats, to manage migration on the boat on international waters. So the thing is, it's been always historically as well that the migration, there's a route and there's a barricade always, and there's gonna be a whole situation of like creating a route and someone will create some sort of a fortification against it, and it's been this happening from history as well. And sadly, I see a more robotic AI high-tech civilian system where asylum seekers can be detected from far away to rescue them away from the European territory, and or to manage migration and give them rejection away from the territory of applying asylum in third safe countries. That's how, this is the worst case, and it's happening sadly, unfortunately there.
Yeah. Last question to Jennifer. What is the worst? No, I'm joking. What is your future project? Advocating for refugees, if you have any.
I actually would like to join the question because I'm interested in the future of the film. So it was already on several film festivals, but it's an impact film, right? So what is the campaign around it? Where does it go farther?
Mm-hmm. Thanks for the question. With Moria 6, I try to use my privilege to give a voice to these 6 teenagers and to be heard. So I think film can also be an activistic tool, and I think my work has always focused on human rights issues. So I think my future projects will also play with, or like have this in focus on human rights. And I think it's because film has the power to make people see things differently and to change how we talk about migration and injustice. But on the other hand, I don't want to romanticize filmmaking either, because it's quite hard to measure the impact of a film and filmmaking, and if filmmaking change big things. So I'm between these two lines, but the Moria 6 film is as you said, Sonia, is invited at some film festivals around the world, and in the end of May, we will start showing the film in German cinemas. And I think at the moment it's quite unclear what will happen to the film, but I wish that the film will have some impact on people who watch it, and And to the other question, if the film has an impact campaign, it wasn't planned to have an impact campaign, and there's actually also no money for like having this structure. But at the moment we do have, I don't know if you know this platform ShareDocs. Mm-hmm. It's a platform where films can ask for donation. Like it's kind of a website for the film, and after seeing the film, you see a QR code, and you are able to scan this code, and then you are free to donate if you like to. So this is our campaign right now, but so quite small one.
Well, thank you very much, Jennifer and Alaa, for being with us today, talking about the issue. It's a very broad issue, and you're using this film to show a lot of problems that are happening in Greece with the situation of Moria 6, but also all the other asylum seekers. So thank you very much for presenting this. We will definitely share some links to the trailer and some information about the screenings. As you said, it's coming into German cinemas soon, so hopefully it will, I'm sure it will, at least raise some awareness of the issue, because not everybody around Europe know about Moria 6. Thank you very much one more time, guys, for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is it for today. And just a small request. As every humanitarian and non-profit project, we are funded from individual donors. If you watch us regularly, if you feel like this podcast brings you some additional value, or if you align with our mission of bringing important topics related to humanitarian situation, refugee situation, and human rights, please consider supporting us. It can be as much as 2 or 3 euros a month. So basically your coffee, if you would like to support us on, for example, Patronite. We will add a link to it in the show notes. Thank you very much, and see you next week.